Hey, Jesus Fellowship family, Pastor Mike. Hope you're having a great Wednesday. Like we said on Sunday, we wanted to follow up this week with some video teaching series here on communion. So today we're going to start with answering the question, what is communion? Simply, it is an ordinance or a sacrament. And those terms are used interchangeably, and all they really point to is something that Jesus Christ instituted himself for use in and by his church. Now we have two sacraments, they're baptism and communion. We're focusing in on just the one today. So what we really want to say when we answer the question, what is communion, is one, what does it represent? And two, what's going on during it? Well, it really points to the reality of our communion with Christ. That's why we call it communion. And it involves symbols or elements. This would be bread and wine or grape juice if that's your persuasion. And it points to the greater reality of the work of Christ as a sign and as a seal. Now, there are three things really going on in this aspect of sign and seal, and that's what we're going to try and hammer out right now. The first is, and this is drawing from Matthew chapter 26, verses 26 through 28, the Last Supper. Jesus is instituting this meal as a sign pointing to what he is going to do. So in our context today, this is a sign pointing back to the accomplished work of redemption. So every time we gather together as believers, partaking of the table, we are partaking and we are proclaiming together that these symbols, these elements, represent something that Christ did for us as believers. Now, it's not just a looking back. It's not just a remembrance of what was done. There's this element as well of when we come together for communion, it is Christ himself inviting us to come and feast with him. So this is kind of like a present tense understanding. And this is drawn from 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verses 16 through 18, where Paul says, when we partake of the body and the bread, and we partake of the blood and the wine, we are having communion with Christ. Now, put simply, this is just us coming together and enjoying the presence of Christ. Not physically, we don't believe it's his physical body and blood, but in a very real spiritual sense. We are coming to the table that our Lord invites us to, coming as redeemed sinners to feast with our God, only made possible by the work of Jesus Christ. Now, there's also a third aspect, and this is the future tense of this ordinance, and that is we take these elements as a seal of our redemption. So we look forward to what Christ is going to do when he returns and he brings us fully into the kingdom. We're going to feast with him. We're going to enjoy his presence. And it will that time be a very real physical presence of Christ. So communion is more than just eating some bread and drinking some wine or some juice. It is more than just remembering something that Christ did. And that's a very real element of it, but there's more to it. Communion is us looking back to what our Redeemer accomplished for us. It is enjoying his very real spiritual presence as his redeemed people come and join with him at the table. And it looks to a hope, a seal of what God has promised to do for us ultimately in redeeming us to his presence. So it is a sign, it is a seal, it is an enjoying of time and a presence in the presence of Christ. But more importantly, church, it is something that Christ has commanded us to do as we come together and enjoy it as his people. So it's an act of worship. As we come and we take of the table, we are worshiping our Redeemer. We are celebrating his work, and we are looking forward to when he returns to bring us home. So next time, we're going to go in a little bit more detail explaining why we are choosing in this season to abstain from taking the Lord's table until we can come back together as a church. Can't wait to deliver that to you guys. Check it out next time. Thanks and God bless.